Hi, everybody. My name is David Mashian, and I'm Dave the Real Estate Guy. Today, we're going to talk about cold calling. We're going to give you a step by step plan as to how you can make it happen and kind of take this as your step by step plan for your cold calling process. Okay. And obviously, take what you want from it, but at least you got a guideline as to what works best for you, what techniques you can use, what methods to take you forward in succeeding in your marketing endeavors. Okay, so we got 10 of them, so we're going to start with number 1. Number 1 is the obvious. Call expired listings, right? Okay, if sometimes like on the MLS it's easy. It already lists what properties are expired. But let's say in commercial, it's not so easy. And oftentimes if you see a property listed for over 180 days on the market, chances are that it's expired. It's expired. Somebody just left it on the market and it's really not listed anymore. So you can do your research on CoStar and, of course, MLS or any other venues that you think are going to have those listings. But calling expired listings is the low hanging fruit. So we're going to go from the easy targets, the low hanging fruit, to the less easy targets. Okay? Number 2, call for sale by owner. Okay, so for sale by owner, you can find those whether it's on CoStar, LoopNet, MLS, right? You can see that on, let's say if you see it on LoopNet, typically there's no brokerage company listed, or there's a name of a property management company or an LLC. That's when you know it's listed by an owner. It could also be for lease by owner. Oftentimes, if it's being leased by an owner, maybe they're not happy leasing that property. They're having a headache. The leasing is not their thing. They're doing it, and I've targeted them. And the good thing about those is when you call them, there's the owner, and you already know what their expectations are in terms of selling a property. And sometimes they're just kind of burned out on the whole process and are happy to have somebody else take it over. So for sale by owner or for lease by owner, anything that the owner's out there marketing. And we already talked about that a little bit previously, where how successful owners are in marketing their properties is really not so successful. That's why there's brokers. Owners are not very patient. They don't understand the market. Maybe they're even hostile with potential prospects for who want to buy or who want to lease a property. So those are real obstacles that owners face. So it's a great opportunity for you to be that liaison, that middleman, that broker to get that deal and really help them achieve what they want. The third one is call for lease by owner listings. Okay, we already talked about this a little bit. So kind of similar, right? For lease, oftentimes I know the residential people, they call properties that are being leased out by an owner. Maybe they're tired, they want to be out of it. Number 4, sold transactions. So if a property's already sold, why are you calling them, right? That doesn't sound right. They already sold it. It's done. Well, you can call the seller and the buyer. Maybe the seller is selling other assets too. Typically, they want to get out of a portfolio. I've sold many portfolios. And once they're selling one, they're selling others. There's a reason that they're selling. So if that reason has come, whether retirement, death, illness, whatever, it's there and they're getting out. Okay? The buyer is the new owner. So obviously they're probably not going to sell right away unless they're flipping it. But there you go. They may have other assets that they want to sell. You never know. The seller is in the 1031 exchange. Now that's going to be your best buyer. Somebody who's in a 1031 exchange is super motivated to get a deal, and they're not as price sensitive as a buyer who's not in a 1031 exchange. So when that seller has closed their transaction, now they're a buyer in a 1031 exchange. So that's going to be an excellent buyer. Okay, you can do your research on CoStar, MLS, or what other websites you want, or your prospecting, and go back 1 year. Maybe they've already closed. Maybe, it doesn't matter. You want to see what's going on. Out of state owners are excellent. I've done a lot of business with out of state owners. Out of state means out of mind. So it's like the property is kind of something that's out there. They're not attached to it. It's not particularly pride of ownership. It may be something that's they just nobody's really made it easy for them to sell. So when you call them and you know the market, you got it. So a lot of times people are out of state, may want to sell their holdings elsewhere and bring it wherever they're at. So you can use Prospect Now. I thought they're a very good tool. They have it where they even can target who is the out of state owners specifically. Reonomy also has that. I've used Reonomy. And you can go systematically city by city to call wherever you're calling. What's your market area? Now, multiple property owners, which means a property owner who owns multiple properties. Okay, so what does that mean? Very simply, what are your odds if you have a property owner who owns one property versus a property owner who owns 20 properties of getting a deal relative to them? Your odds of getting a deal with somebody who owns 20 properties is 20 times better. The more properties they own, the chances of them wanting to do a deal are going to be dramatically higher compared to somebody who has one property. So you want to target the people who have multiple properties. I've had a lot of success with that. They've had portfolios they want to sell. Usually something's happening, maybe REO, whatever is going on. So use your Prospect Now, like I mentioned, or Reonomy, or go city by city. Use whatever techniques you need to get in there. Now, owner-occupied properties are good, especially with door knocking, if you're in the area. We talked about that, like let's say if it's an industrial property, the owner is the tenant and they are using that property to sell their widgets or as their distribution center or whatever they're doing. They own the property, they're there. Maybe they're thinking of expanding, maybe they're closing, maybe whatever they're doing. So when you got their attention, and they're not real estate people necessarily, their main business is something else. So the real estate kind of is like something that's secondary or maybe even tertiary to what they're planning to do. Okay. So driving around and contacting property owners or knocking on doors is a great way of doing business to contact owner occupied properties. So also people who've owned properties for a long time. If they like you would probably want to contact people who've owned property 20 years plus and then level it down to 10 years plus. So if somebody's owned a property for a longer period of time, the odds of them wanting to sell goes up, right? It's just a matter of time, literally, that they're going to have an opportunity that they want to sell. The longer they've held it, the higher the odds are that they're going to want to sell it. So obviously, some people are not going to sell it; they're going to give it to their kids or grandkids or whoever. But the odds are in your favor that they're going to do something. So if you call enough of those targets, the ones who've owned it a long time are likely going to be the ones who are going to sell. If they just bought it, the odds of them wanting to sell, unless it's a flip, and that's what they were planning, then that's good. But usually it's not a flip. Usually they bought it for some intended purpose, and maybe 20 years ago, and that's done, and they're ready to move on. You know, they had it, they moved out of state, the kids don't want it, whatever. Whatever the reason is, time is a good indicator of their motivation, right? Number 9, I use Prospect Now, and so with Reonomy. They have a system where they basically use an algorithm where you can contact the most likely people that are going to sell. If you click on that category, you're going to get, based on their algorithm, higher probability sellers. And I've used it and it works. You really get better results. So those are definitely a good way of prospecting. And number 10, of course, call whoever you haven't called. Go systematically zip code by zip code or city by city using CoStar, Prospect Now, or any other system. But whoever's left, kind of the rest, call. When I had my when I was prospecting for apartment owners, I made sure that I called everybody in my market. even if I didn't think they were going to be any good or whatever prejudgment I had. I was always surprised by who ended up doing deals. So never prejudge. The ones who you think are not going to do anything, is strangely enough, it sounds like something. They're the ones who end up doing things. So that's it for the 10 ways of the step-by-step plan for making calls. Chapter 27 is next. I'll see you then.